I am so stoked right now because the word citation is a contronym. A contronym is not a synonym or an antonym. A contronym is a word that is its own antonym. There are lots of them, like fast or sanction or whether. All right, the last video was about MLA paper formatting. Where does your name go? Double space or not? That kind of thing. What size font? This episode is also MLA related, and we're in terms of when you're quoting from a source, how do you give credit to that source? And I'm going to be speaking here mostly about like if you're doing a literary analysis or a rhetorical analysis of some kind, because that's primarily what my students are going to be doing. If you are not one of my students and you want to know more, I will put some links down below in terms of things like a Works Cited page if you're doing a whole big research paper or you're using sources that your teacher is not already familiar with. I mean, for my students, typically when I say, hey, I want you to write an analysis of this thing, I don't need a separate little Works Cited bibliography telling me about that thing because I assigned you that thing. But there are some very specific things that I am looking for when you are quoting from a text in a paper. One important note for my students: when I am asking you to write an analysis of a text, I am asking you as you to look at that text. I am not asking you to go out on the internet and type the name of that text and the word analysis, or the name of that text and the word summary, or just to have SparkNotes bookmarked on your phone. I don't want any of that. As a matter of fact, I should remind you of Bullock's first rule of plagiarism, which is that if you can Google it, I can Google it. So don't. So the basic rules of in-text citation, and I say citation and maybe you don't know exactly what it means, but basically it's where you are citing your source, you're giving credit to the source that it came from. But the basic rules of MLA style in-text citation involves parentheses, these guys. What's going to happen is you're going to put in the quote, or it could be a close paraphrase, which it's not that different from a quote. So a quote or a close paraphrase. I'm just going to be talking about quotes in the video, but you know that it's you know what I'm saying. So you put in the quote, and then after the quote, you have in parentheses a number and maybe more. Okay, so the page number, the paragraph number, the line number, whatever is appropriate for the text that you're looking at. If you're talking about a novel, it's probably going to be a page number. If you're talking about a poem, it will definitely be a line number. You do not need the word page, paragraph, line. You don't need to abbreviate P or L or put that paragraph symbol. You don't need any of that. The number is what we're looking for, because as a teacher, I understand that what you're putting in parentheses is the number of the page, paragraph, or line where you found the thing. I don't need you to be doubly redundant in that way. There are also times when you will put the author's last name, but I'll get to that in a second. The thing that is not negotiable, that must always be there in the parentheses, is a number. Except for the one exception on that, which I will also get to later. All right, and I said that the author's name might be optional. It might not be necessary. And there are, I think, two cases. I know. There are two cases when the author's name is not necessary. One of them is if you're only talking about a single text. If I say, hey, I need you to write an analysis on Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven, and all the quotes in your paper are from The Raven, I don't need you to put Poe's name in parentheses the entire time. The other time would be when you put Poe's name in the sentence. But let's take a look at a couple of examples first. Here is where you are putting in the quote, and you're going to put Poe's name and the line number where it came from. So this is line 48 of The Raven. You're going to have something like this. Quote, quoth the Raven, nevermore, close the quotes, parentheses, Poe, 48, close the parentheses, period. Now it seems like there's a lot going on there, but it's Okay, it is a lot that's going on there, but the basics are you put the words that you have taken verbatim, word for word, from Poe's text. You put them into the quotation marks to indicate that you are taking them word for word from Poe's text. If you're not taking something word for word from the text, do not put them in quotation marks. It will confuse me. You put those words in quotation marks. After the quotation marks, you put in some parentheses where you have the author's name, Poe, and the line number. Now, students will often, either within a sentence in their text or even within the parentheses, instead of saying Poe, they would say Edgar. Now, I have some bad news for you. You do not know Edgar Allan Poe. You have never met him. You've never hung out with him. You were not there when he died drunk in a puddle in Baltimore. He is not your friend. You do not get to call him by his first name. So when you are referring to an author anywhere in your text, you need either first name, or last name. In the in-text citation, it's only last name. Unless you are writing about two people who might have the same last name, like if you're analyzing poetry by Langston Hughes and Head Hughes, but that's, you know what, that's more complicated than anything we need to get to here. Anyway, I said there was another way in which the author's name would be optional in the parentheses, and that's if you put the author's name in the sentence. So you could write your sentence something like, Poe gives the raven a voice when he writes, quote, quoth the raven nevermore, parentheses 48. See there, you put the word Poe in the sentence, and so I know that you're quoting from Poe, and you don't have to put Poe in parentheses because that would be a little bit redundant. Now you could actually, this is the one exception to the number being mandatory, you could actually go so far as to put the number in the sentence as well. Poe gives the raven a voice in line 48 when he writes, quote, quote the raven, nevermore, close the quote, and you're done. You don't need the parentheses because you got the name and the line number in the sentence. So those three options of author's last name, number, just the number, or neither, because you put both of those into the sentence, those apply even if you're talking about more than one author in the same place. So I'm going to compare the raven here to a retelling of the story of the tortoise and the hare. Quoth the raven, nevermore, parentheses Poe 48, but quoth the hare, you are surely insane, parentheses Larned 6. Okay, so there, I'm quoting from two different authors, so I want to make sure their names are in the parentheses so that the teacher, the person who's reading it, knows which author said which, and I'm putting in the appropriate line number. These are both poems. And now, of course, you could put both Poe's and Larned's name into the sentence so that you only need the line numbers, and you'd get something like this. Poe gives the raven a voice when he writes, quote, quoth the raven, nevermore, parentheses 48, and Larned does the same with, quote, quoth the hare, you are surely insane, parentheses 6. So there we've managed to take the author's names out of the parentheses, put them into the sentence, and you can do the exact same thing with both name and line number. Poe gives the raven a voice when he writes in line 48, quoth the raven, nevermore, and Larned does the same in line 6, quoth the hare, you are surely insane. Let's go beyond the basics and talk about the punctuation, because the punctuation is very specific here. Whenever you are using the parenthetical citation, the period at the end of that sentence does not go in the quotation marks, even if you are quoting a full sentence or the end of a sentence from your source text. The period goes after the parentheses. You saw that in those examples. When there were no parentheses, the ones where we put the author's name and the line number in the sentence, so we had no parentheses at all, in that case, the period went inside the quotation marks because we didn't need to make room for parentheses. And also punctuation related, you may be looking at those examples that we used and thinking, well, why are there double quotes sometimes and single quotes other times? Well, so you, as the writer who is writing about this source, anything that you take word for word from that source, you are going to put into the regular double quotations, those quotations. That's the signal to the reader that you are quoting. Now, you may be quoting an instance where a character speaks, like when the raven says, nevermore. And Poe put the Raven's words into double quotes because he was the writer and he was quoting what somebody, the Raven said. But you, as the writer, quoting Poe as the text, you're going to put Poe's double quotation marks. You're going to change them into these those quotation marks, the single ones. So a quote within a quote gets those single quotation marks. One final note on punctuation. I said that periods always go after the parentheses when you are using an in-text citation that uses parentheses like that. But question marks and exclamation points do not. I don't invent these rules. I just teach them to you and then make you feel bad when you don't follow them. I'm sorry about that, but I want you to learn. So let's skip to a different part of Poe's poem. Poe ends his poem with a sad exclamation, quote, "My soul shall be lifted nevermore." Exclamation point, close the quotes, parentheses, Poe 107 to 108, close the parentheses, period. You'll notice that the exclamation point was in the quotes, but we still put a period after the parentheses because our sentence, the writer, you the analyst, your sentence finished. Poe's finished a little bit earlier than that with the exclamation point. So anyway, down below, as I said, I've got some extra links about the Modern Language Association, MLA format of different kinds, and I have a downloadable printable PDF of all of these examples from the Raven and the Tortoise and the Hare thing that you can print, that you can keep with you, or that you can just download. You've got it on your phone or wherever it is that you might want to keep documents in order to remind yourself of what proper MLA style is. And I will see you for the next one.